before this video starts, I wanted to say thank you. I've been working on this video for the past couple months, and it has been exhausting. But there have been a couple people commenting and encouraging me to get this video made. Because of these encouraging comments, it gave me the extra motivation I need to get this video done. So hey, thank you guys for encouraging me. But on that note, why did I do this to myself? So, I have a very complicated relationship with the Horizon series. I love the first game with a deep passion, but I really don't share the same passion with its sequel, Horizon Forbidden West. I've dunked on this game in the past, but my video about why I regret buying a PS5 was when I made a mistake. I promised people that I would give Forbidden West another chance if the video hit 300 likes, and boy were my expectations passed. So I really had no choice but to revisit the game. But I didn't have a massive problem with that. Horizon Forbidden West has been like this nagging at the back of my mind for the past 3 years, festering and building this inflated sense of duty in my mind to one day revisit the game. So, let's do this. Let's go back to the Forbidden West and find out if my disdain for this game is warranted, and give Horizon Forbidden West a second chance. Although, I will be doing things differently this time around. Before touching Forbidden West, I went back and did a full playthrough of Horizon Zero Dawn. Partly because I was procrastinating, partly to play a game I enjoy, and because I wanted to double check a few things. Then there's the matter of hardware. When I first played this game, it was on the PS4, and boy did its performance suffer. So this time, I'm going to avoid that and play this on my PS5. I already own the console, so I might as well do something with it. This time around, I actually have to beat the game. Last time I tried this game out, I got so fed up that I gave up and moved on. So this time, I played through the entire story of Forbidden West. I'm doing all this because I want to give this game a fair chance to impress me. A genuine second chance. So what do I think about it now? Did I judge the game too harshly? What are my thoughts on the experience? Oh boy, do I have some thoughts. And the best place to start is by covering the story. Let's go. Upon opening the game, we get a recap of the first game from Sylens, and it's bad. Sylens might have the intelligence of Stephen Hawking, but he's not a great storyteller. But it is a good idea to catch everyone up to speed on the first game. To keep it brief, 1,000 years ago, a line of war machines known as the Pharaoh Swarm could consume biomass as fuel. They went haywire and were on a fast track to consume all life on Earth. To preserve life, a project called Zero Dawn, led by Elizabeth Sobek, developed a hyper-intelligent AI called Gaia. Gaia's numerous functions were handled by subordinate functions, but the Apollo database was deleted by Ted Faro, depriving a new humanity of their education and leaving them in nomadic tribes. Then, a mystery signal from an unknown place made one of the functions go rogue. In order to combat this, Gaia made a clone of Elizabeth to hopefully destroy the rogue Hades program and restore Gaia. That clone is Aloy, and over the course of the first game, she destroys Hades and saves the world. Horizon Forbidden West kicks off 6 months after the events of the first game. Aloy is on the hunt for a backup of the hyper-intelligent AI terraforming system known as Gaia. Without a central governing process to maintain balance, the terraforming system has been perpetuating harmful protocols that are steadily destabilizing the environment. With this degrading behavior continuing, the planet's ecosystem is on the brink of total collapse, and only Aloy can restart Gaia and save the world. And already I have a problem with the story. Why are we starting off with save the world stakes? Imagine my sister here represents the narrative of Forbidden West, and this German Shepherd represents the stakes. Now you have to hold those stakes for the entire game, and good luck with that! Forbidden West is setting up these insurmountable stakes, but it needs to maintain that conflict for the entire story. And spoiler alert, it doesn't hold on to the stakes very well. Oh yeah, I'm gonna be spoiling the narrative of Forbidden West like it's that moldy bread in your pantry. So if you have problems with that, you've been warned. Aloy is chasing a lead that could lead her to a Gaia backup, and the trail leads to the Far Zenith base of operations. Varl is also here, and they both head into the facility. This is where we get our first taste of gameplay, and the first thing that should be apparent is the visuals. This environment looks great, down to the foliage and animations. You can tell that a lot of work went into the visuals of this game. As Aloy and Varl go through the facility, they learn a little bit about the place. This facility was run by Far Zenith, a group who tried escaping the Pharaoh Swarm by evacuating the planet. Far Zenith had a deal with Zero Dawn to be given the Apollo database. However, Far Zenith wanted the entire Gaia program, so they tried to steal a copy of it. A seemingly logical plan, but there are some things that don't make sense. The Apollo database is designed to re-educate a reincarnated humanity, so why would a bunch of scientists who already know this information bring a 50 billion terabyte online curriculum? It's no wonder they want to steal the rest of Gaia for its terraforming functions, but why did they make such a useless deal to begin with? Elizabeth caught wind of this and made sure Far Zenith only got a meme copy filled with malware, which also raises more questions. Elizabeth has a tight deadline to get this AI working before all life is consumed, and she's redirecting key staff to protect her intellectual property? These events are taking place during a robot apocalypse. I seriously doubt any court cares about a patent violation right now. It's things like this that were early indicators of what was to come. A fancy internet prank is no substitute for an artificial intelligence, and this was Aloy's last lead to finding a Gaia backup. With nowhere left to go, Aloy and Varl return to Meridian to make a new plan. This is where the adventure really begins. A little incident with the Spire happened while Aloy was away. Upon investigating, it turns out Hades, the genocidal rampant AI, was transmitted into the Forbidden West by Sylens. He pulled out a wild card and saved Hades so he could interrogate it for the knowledge it has, and he's been very busy these last 6 months. In his suave voice, Sylens invites Aloy out to the Forbidden West to see some of the progress he has made. Aloy is pissed, but she doesn't have any other options available to her, so she sets off on her adventure into the Forbidden West. I'm not gonna lie, I love this intro. Sure, the stuff about Elizabeth Sobek and Far Zenith is pretty clunky, but this is a smooth and engaging introduction to the story. As Aloy rode past the recognizable locations from the first game, a part of me started to wonder if I would have a better experience this time round. The first area of the game is the Claim, a territory that borders the Forbidden West, and hey, Aaron's here as well. On the way to the coordinates Sylens provided, Aloy encounters the Tenakth rebels led by Regalla. We kill Regalla's champion, and then we head further west. After following the trail Sylens left, Aloy finds a now mutilated Hades. Over the last 6 months, Sylens has been aggressively data mining the Hades program, and he learned a few things from it. He learned that this location was where the Hades program was initially developed, and that there might be a Gaia backup inside. Sylens is mostly right. When Aloy enters the facility, she finds a sort of template for Gaia, one that needs some subordinate functions to actually be useful. So right now it's useless, but there's still a little hope. If Aloy can find some subordinate functions out in the open world, she can use them to give Gaia some processing power and build it back up. In fact, she's even able to locate one using the nearby computer, one named Minerva. Things are looking good right now. What could possibly go wrong? Hey Gorilla, I think a couple assets from Returnal may have made their way into your game. Wait, these guys are supposed to be here? Seriously? Oh, and would you look at that, there's another clone of Elizabeth Sobek here, helping them out. We don't know who these people are yet, but they grab the second Gaia backup and try and kill Aloy. The problem is, these guys have some sort of force field that protects them from everything, and making counterattacks is impossible. Aloy makes a desperate escape that almost gets her killed. Fortunately, Varl shows up again to save Aloy and brings her to a nearby Utaru village. It's here that we meet Zoe. Also, there's this. How long was Aloy unconscious? It doesn't matter, because Zoe can help us reach Minerva, which is currently in Utaru territory. The Utaru are having a rough time right now dealing with the Blight killing their crops. Yeah, I'll get back to the Blight in a minute. Even though they are on the brink of extinction, the Utaru are totally fine with it. I'm not kidding, the Utaru are perfectly happy with dying out, and they refuse to let Aloy into the mountain where Minerva is. I don't know what these guys are smoking, and I don't care because 5 seconds after telling Aloy no, a bunch of machines attack and Aloy enters the mountain. The Utaru are just there to waste time, and if I'm being completely honest, I absolutely hate the Utaru. Once they enter the mountain, Aloy and company go through a mandatory cauldron level before they encounter Hephaestus. Hephaestus was the subordinate function responsible for manufacturing machines. We'll get back to it later, but right now there's a machine fight and Aloy purges Hephaestus from the cauldron. With that done, Aloy sneaks her way into a chamber where Minerva is hiding. and after a little convincing, manages to get Minerva to merge with the Gaia kernel. After a fancy effects transition, Gaia has now been rebooted. Kind of. Gaia's processing power is at the bare minimum since she is relying on one subordinate function. But there are other problems. Starting off, the antagonists. They suck. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Remember that stuff about Far Zenith at the beginning of this adventure? The people trying to flee Earth to start an off-world colony? Well, apparently these guys are descendants of that space arc. Gaia deduces that the people at the Hades Proving Lab were the ones who sent the extinction signal that made Hades go mad, and now they're here to recolonize Earth. In the meantime, the Earth's biosphere will collapse in a couple months. In order to save the world, Aloy has to bring back more subordinate functions to bring Gaia back to an acceptable performance level so she can absorb Hephaestus, and with Hephaestus, they can make an army of machines to fight back the declining state of Earth and drive off the Far Zeniths. Okay then, so we have some objectives. Go to the 3 locations where the subordinate functions are hiding and bring them back to Gaia. While I could keep recapping the story, I think this is a good time to start talking about other aspects of Forbidden West, like the general gameplay. As I said before, this game is gorgeous. You can really tell where the $212 million budget went. Oh yeah, that's how much this game cost to make. Upon booting up the game, it feels like you can touch every blade of grass, succulent vine, and the metal looks good while rested. Oh, but the melee combat feels awesome. After a few minutes in the game, I found myself preferring melee combat while fighting smaller enemies like... Okay, let's address the Tremor Tusk in the room. Horizon Forbidden West rips off Breath of the Wild, and in a lot of ways. Let's talk about the first one we encounter, the Blight. The Blight is this red growth that has been spreading all over the place, choking out the other plant life and killing animals. It doesn't take long to figure out how Guerrilla Games came up with this. It's a copy of the Malice from Breath of the Wild, only worse. Unlike Malice, the Blight doesn't have a solid origin or explanation for its existence. It just seems to have shown up to cause problems. Remember how nice it was in Zero Dawn, when all the elements of the world had compelling lore explanations? Man, I miss that. Well, this fickle weed doesn't have that and is just annoying. It's also unbelievably inconsistent, and there are times when I was trudging through it and wasn't taking damage. And don't get me started on the paraglider. Oh wait, I am getting started on it. Yes, I'm aware they call it something else in the game, but it doesn't matter because this is the most egregious ripoff of them all. I even went out of my way not to use the paraglider, because the game is just better off without it. Guerrilla Games even had the balls to make an achievement for gliding longer than 60 seconds. Who makes an achievement for something like that? I'll tell you who, a game dev trying to gaslight players into thinking this mechanic is original. And the developers didn't stop there, they also tried to rip off the free climbing, only they made it more confusing. The climbing in Forbidden West is built like numerous other games. There are clear handholds that can be grabbed onto and strung together to make a clear path. A sudden surprise comes along when Aloy grabs onto a random rock face and with no warning. Upon scanning the environment, it can be seen that there are hundreds of these previously invisible handholds. Horizon Zero Dawn already had the classic handhold method, but now Forbidden West has added an invisible secondary climbing system, and it just becomes perplexing. All these mechanics were just forced in here without considering how they would interact with the rest of the game. This behavior even has a name. It's called cargo cult mentality. Cargo cult mentality is where a person takes an idea from another source and tries remaking it without understanding why it worked. And that's exactly what Forbidden West is doing here. But there are other problems in the gameplay, like how the introductions are cooked.
What I was thinking of was, oh fuck, I can't believe you've done this.
Let me paint the picture. Back in Chainscrape, the first area of the game, Aloy is tasked with finding Erend. On the way, she acquires a Tripcaster, one of the best weapons in the first game. But when I tried to stun a Bristleback with a Tripcaster, this happened. This is the beginning of the game, the time when player actions and habits are solidified. So the Tripcaster working so badly on Bristlebacks is terrible. Take for instance How to Train a Dog. When he does something well, he gets a treat. When he does something wrong, he gets punished. By having a weapon here that is useless against an important enemy, you are essentially punishing the player by getting them killed. I went back to the first game to check on this exact same thing, but in that game, the Tripcaster shocked the Sawtooth just fine. Not only was one of the most creative weapons in the game nerfed, the terrible tutorial actively discourages players from experimenting with any new weapons. This is basic operant conditioning. How did you mess this up so badly? But it gets worse when we move into the rest of the combat. I love the combat in the Horizon games. The act of scanning an enemy, locating weaknesses, and then exploiting those weaknesses is one of the most exhilarating gaming experiences out there. So there I was, having fun blowing up machine components until it came time to upgrade my weapons. Upgrading weapons costs materials, and I had every material I needed except for one: sack webbing from machines like Bellowbacks and Frostclaws. This was a little weird because I had already killed multiple Bellowbacks and hadn't gotten a sack webbing from them. But then I learned that I was doing it wrong. Bellowback sack webbing doesn't drop unless the gigantic sack on the back remains intact when the machine dies. That's right, by having fun and breaking enemy components, the game will punish you. But it doesn't end with Bellowbacks. You see that giant target on the Frostclaw's belly? Well, if you want Frostclaw sack webbing, you can't target that. You want some Echo Shells from Longlegs to make Terrorblast arrows? Well then don't target those inflated sacks on their chest, otherwise you will be rewarded with fewer Echo Shells. These are also the components that, when destroyed, will disable some of the more obnoxious attacks the enemies use. So the tactical aspect of the game is also getting punished. Bad gamer, you aren't supposed to be having fun! How? How do you mess this up this badly? You know what's funny about this? They had the perfect series to take inspiration from: Monster Hunter. In the Monster Hunter games, players are rewarded with bonus materials if they break monster parts. You had the perfect model to follow, a game series that has been practicing this formula of hunting monsters for 20 years. Again, how do you mess this up so badly? But combat isn't the only thing that's been twisted. Overrides have also been cooked. Overriding was one of the more unique and exhilarating features from the first game. You could take enemy machines and then reprogram them to be your friend. Now if only it survived in this game. Let's say you wanted a pet Slaughter Spine. You go to the cauldron, kill the machine at the core, and collect the override for the Slaughter Spine. You thought it was over? Well, no, there's more. I don't know exactly why, but Forbidden West adds this extra step in the form of corrupted overrides. In order to get the override in a working state, you need to collect materials from defeated Slaughter Spines, repair the override at the research bench, and then you can have a long walk on the beach with your new pet Slaughter Spine. Well, I hope those extra chores were worth it, because there's a chance you won't be able to override that machine. Enter Apex enemies. Apex enemies are stronger variants of regular machines, but the only really threatening thing about them is that they can't be overridden. I'd rather not disclose how many times I have snuck up on a machine hoping to get a ride to a nearby location, but then realized it was an Apex enemy that I couldn't override. These guys are everywhere, but don't be too scared, because Apex enemies are practically identical to their regular counterparts, with only a few superficial details differentiating them, which makes me wonder why they're in the game in the first place. They screw up the potential for overriding machines, and farming Apex exclusive materials is just obnoxious. So the gameplay is disorganized and the combat is bent backwards, but maybe the story still has some redeemable aspect to it. The player can acquire the subordinate functions in any order they choose. The recommended route is to first visit the Tenakth to retrieve Aether. This chapter is actually quite fun. We get to fight a Tremor Tusk, use heavy weaponry, blow up a fortress wall, and we get to meet Kotallo, perhaps my favorite new character in this game. It still has some flaws, but overall it's a lot of fun. But then we make our way south to the ruins of Las Vegas in the chapter Sea of Sands. This is easily my favorite story chapter of the whole game. We've got goofy lovable Oseram characters, a flooded Las Vegas illuminated with holographic ocean life, underwater stealthing, and it culminates with a Tide Ripper fight tuned with some awesome battle music. But this chapter also brings up one big issue I have with the game: Aloy. Over the course of this adventure, Aloy has been a temperamental, abrasive, unsociable piece of work. She regularly tells her closest companions to get lost or threatens to kill them. But then, when Aloy is in the Sea of Sands chapter, she starts geeking out over machine components, is highly encouraging to the Oseram, has a softer tone of voice, and dare I say it, becomes adorable. Where exactly has this version of Aloy been the entire game? Because I much prefer this character over the irritating version we're stuck with. This is just one facet of why I highly dislike Aloy. I'm not kidding when I say she tells her friends to get lost, but then somewhere along the way, for no clear reason at all, she changes her tune and decides to accept her entourage of supporting characters. Is this supposed to be character development? Because I don't understand what's driving this change. There's nothing challenging Aloy on a personal level, and the narrative suffers because of that. Because of this disjointed characterization, I wouldn't be surprised if Aloy had dissociative identity disorder. But yeah, Sea of Sands is great. The next chapter isn't. Seeds of the Past is a passable chapter at best, which introduces what might be my least favorite character in this entire game. Introducing Alva, the ditzy honor roll student who will not shut up. I kid you not, if this character encounters any uncomfortable lore revelation, she will just start whining and crying. Alva is part of an empire from across the sea called the Quen. The Quen revere the ancient peoples of the past, and they treat ancient data like it's scripture. Keep this in mind for later on. Aloy now has all 3 subordinate functions, so she brings them back to Gaia and Beta. Oh right, I forgot to talk about Beta. So after fetching the first subordinate function, a story mission occurs where Aloy and friends investigate a strange signal that could possibly be another subordinate function. Instead, they witness a Far Zenith get killed, and they find Beta inside of a cryopod. Beta decided to defect from the Far Zeniths because they're so comically evil. Beta here gives a little bit of interesting info. To begin with, it turns out that the Far Zeniths that are being encountered are humans who lived 1,000 years ago during the Pharaoh Plague. Somehow they had the most advanced medicine imaginable, and were able to extend their lives to this point in time. Beta also alludes to the fact that there might be one benevolent Far Zenith member, but then she freaks out and shuts down. Oh yeah, she does that from time to time. It's not my favorite quality of this character, but she's still nowhere near as aggravating as Alva. Her emotional maturity is more palatable since she didn't grow up around people. She was just stuck in a training simulation her whole life with barely any human affection or healthy social environments. I wasn't the biggest fan of her in the beginning, but I liked her a little more as time went on, and she actually does play some plot relevance in capturing Hephaestus. One of the objectives during the game is to capture the subordinate function Hephaestus, which was capable of engineering and producing machines. However, Hephaestus has become a malevolent AI, and capturing it will be very difficult. Hephaestus rewrote its code to ignore the Alpha Registry, meaning it won't listen to Aloy or Beta. The crew needs something big to get Hephaestus back in line, something like Ted Pharaoh's Omega clearance. So Aloy sets off to find Thebes, the high-tech bunker where Ted Pharaoh retreated when the world ended. It is here that the Pharaoh's Tomb story quest begins. Pharaoh's Tomb is both my favorite and least favorite chapter in the entire game. It starts off by tracking down the Quen. In the ruins of San Francisco, the Quen are also looking for Ted Pharaoh's resting place, and they've actually managed to find it. The Quen are led by this guy called the CO, and once the bunker opens, it's revealed just how off his rocker he is. The CO believes that he's a living reincarnation of Ted Pharaoh, inheriting his spirit and essence. The CO is convinced that the final history of Ted Pharaoh hidden inside Thebes will make him whole. Yeah, he's a little weird like that. Now being held at Arrow Point, Aloy and the others descend into Thebes. Inside, Aloy finds recordings of a little girl who was trapped in the bunker with Ted, and the steady revelation and new information starts to build up a palpable sense of dread. There are revelations about how Ted ruled this place with lethal force, how no one was safe, and that Ted was working with a doctor on procedures that could extend his lifespan. These treatments worked, to a degree. It kept Ted alive, but without anyone to calm the mutations down that popped up, he turned into a giant tumor attached to the reactor. He's become so horrifying that the game doesn't even want to show him on screen. The CO doesn't take very well to that, and orders they torch what's left of Ted Pharaoh, which causes a giant chain reaction that causes all of Thebes to come crumbling down. Despite the falling debris, Aloy and Alva manage to escape Thebes with the Omega clearance. Now, before I get into my issues, I have to say there are some things here that I love. Thebes is a memorable environment, and it was nice to see the classic Corruptor again. And I absolutely love the buildup of dread leading to Ted's reveal. But then there's my big issue with the story. All their antagonists suck. When it comes to obstacles and challenges faced in the game, the antagonistic characters are just lame pushovers. Ulven from Chainscript, Takote of the Sky Clan, the CEO who controls the Quen, Ted Faro, and half the Far Zenith characters with lines. All these guys are pushovers. They're portrayed as excessively greedy, irrationally arrogant, or complete lunatics, but they aren't compelling challenges. And guess what? The one exception is Regalla. You know, the one who leads the Tenakth rebels, is the strongest human fight in the main story, who Hekarro won't stop showering with accolades, and if spared is given a partial redemption arc plus heroic death, even though her rebellion killed thousands of people. What pisses me off is that they pose no meaningful challenge. These characters have the strength of a wet paper towel, and their deaths are comically convenient. I hate every single one of these guys, not just because they're lame, but because of the wasted potential of one character in particular, Ted Faro. Dream with me for a second. In the depths of Thebes, Ted Faro awakens from a living nightmare to find out that Gaia has self-destructed. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he uses his Omega clearance to take control of Hephaestus, and Ted's first order is to build him a mechanical body. A robotic frame that towers over the trees, is armed to the teeth, and adequately houses a mutated Ted inside. If you wanted to really get wild with this idea, the Quen would revere Ted as a living god, and would happily follow his orders to carry out any conquest he desires. Faro needs to be stopped, and after an epic battle, he isn't defeated by brute force, but he's killed with kindness. Just one small taste of human warmth that he has been craving for thousands of years. And, possibly by the clone of an individual he had desired affection from the most. Okay, I know that last part was a little bit of a stretch, but it's not even that outlandish. And that's not even addressing the character growth he could help Aloy with. Ted Faro explicitly states in his recordings that he doesn't want to be left alone. He craves companionship, no matter how depraved it might get, which is something that Aloy is indifferent to at the beginning of the story. Having an antagonist that desires human companionship could have been the shot in the arm Aloy needed to appreciate her companions, unlike the unmotivated change we get in the game. Normally I would brush this off as bad fanfiction, but Ted Faro is established to be alive in-game, and he has the Omega clearance. All the pieces are here to make an amazing antagonist, and the only reason I can think they didn't go with this is because of the developers' vendetta against Ted Faro. And yes, this has been living in my head rent-free for the past 3 years, and now it will live in your head as well. Also, would you guys mind hitting the like and subscribe buttons in the meantime? I actually drew those drawings for the Ted Faro bit, and they took forever because I had no idea what I was doing. So yeah, it would be really nice to know that all that work was actually worth something. Anyways, back to the review. Aloy now has the Omega clearance, so she heads back to base before they attempt to capture Hephaestus. The plan is to trap Hephaestus in a cauldron and then use the Omega clearance to force it back in line and merge with Gaia. Unfortunately, Far Zenith crashes the party before all is said and done. Varl gets killed, Beta and Gaia are taken, and it looks like Aloy is going to die here. But before Aloy is killed, the female Far Zenith bails Aloy out of trouble by using a flash bomb. This is Tilda, a Far Zenith who apparently had an infatuation with Elizabeth 1,000 years ago. After watching some footage of Aloy's life, she wants to help. So I'm gonna be candid with you guys, Tilda is just an awful character. She comes out of left field and tries to win over the player's trust, but her little stunt from earlier isn't nearly enough to get that. Not only that, whenever she's asked to take accountability for what Far Zenith is doing, she just keeps blaming Gerard. That's not a joke. Every time Tilda could take accountability for her actions, she blames someone else and tries to paint herself as someone stuck with the wrong crowd. I would say Tilda is my least favorite, but Alva is still pretty annoying. Tilda proposes that while Sylens is throwing Tenakth troops at the Far Zenith base, The two of them will sneak in through a back door and end the Far Zeniths themselves. Oh yeah, Sylens has been working with the Tenakth rebels and teaching them how to override machines. He also managed to develop a way to deactivate the Far Zenith's personal shields. Aloy decides that this plan isn't good enough, so she hatches her own plan to defeat the Far Zeniths. Aloy first uses a secret data channel to give instructions to Beta. Now she needs to disable Regalla's rebellion. Aloy resolves this by dropping an EMP on the battlefield and beating Regalla. With Sylens' plan now ruined, he decides to team up with Aloy. Now with all the tools needed, it's time to head into the final fight of the game. Everyone's all pumped up and ready to get those Far Zeniths, except there's one problem. It's not with the story, it's with the game's performance. Remember how I said this game is running much better on PS5 hardware than PS4 hardware? Well, it looks like I spoke too soon, because there are a lot of bugs here. There will be times when machine armor spawns, but the machine itself hasn't loaded in yet, and it also happens to human heads as well. But my favorite one I encountered was when two tallnecks spawned in the same location when there's only supposed to be one. Most of these were fun to encounter, but I started to get really scared when the audio started bugging out. I don't expect games to be perfect, but I was expecting Forbidden West to be better than this. I am running this game on the best hardware available to me. No, I will not waste my money on a PS5 Pro. I am giving this game every chance to impress me, and it is still failing. Whatever, let's get back to the final story mission. On a beach in the south, Aloy and friends enter Tilda's secret door to the Far Zenith base. After fighting a bunch of specters, Beta comes through to help out. Beta hooked up Hephaestus to the Far Zenith printing platform, which results in a mechanized army being mass-produced to fight the majority of specters. We also encounter the rest of the Far Zeniths, which are quickly broken up when Sylens breaks their personal shields. Everything is looking good. Aloy is running up to save Beta, and that... Ah, nuts, is this supposed to be Forbidden West's version of Helis? Oh, it totally is. And it's inferior in every way. Helis from Zero Dawn was a fantastic antagonist. He was this perfect combination of belligerent and religious fanaticism in one well-rounded package. He was also a key part in the story, since his attack on Nora Lands acted as the call to adventure for Aloy. Erik, on the other hand, is nowhere even close to as significant. He's just the guy who works for Far Zenith and shoots things from time to time. We don't even get to kill him ourselves, because a pregnant Zoe walks up behind Erik and stabs him. Oh yeah, Zoe still exists, and Varl knocked her up, but she's so boring and uninteresting that I couldn't care less about her existence or drama. Now that the human speed bump has been passed, it's time to climb up to save Beta. But then, for reasons I am still trying to process, the story does something really aggravating. While Aloy is climbing, Alva has gotten into the Far Zenith database, and found there's a little something called Nemesis. Once Aloy reaches Beta, they access the Far Zenith database to learn about this Nemesis, and Tilda shows up to help explain it after shooting Gerard. Well, it's time for an exposition dump. It turns out the Nemesis thing is a failed attempt to upload human consciousness into machines. It broke loose from containment, destroyed the Far Zenith colony, sent the extinction signal that awakened Hades, and is now headed to Earth to finish off the Far Zeniths and the rest of life on Earth. Does it actually show up in-game? No, it's just a shameless bait for the third Horizon game. I cannot tell you how much I hate this Scooby-Doo level of writing. Going back to Zero Dawn, that game concluded its narrative in a satisfying package, but we don't get that here. This sequel bait is so horrific that the Far Zeniths are trying to retrieve Gaia and make a new colony on a star system far, far away where they will never be found. They're almost done, but Tilda doesn't want to leave without Aloy, because she's still hot for Elizabeth. Instead, she boards a machine and tries to take Aloy by force. The game acts like this is some sort of gut-wrenching moment, but I don't know, attempting to break the world record for biggest age gap isn't exactly the riveting narrative I signed up for. Sylens decides not to go up on the Far Zenith ship just yet, everyone stands together for a final cheesy shot, and the narrative ends with a narration of Aloy preparing the players for Horizon 3. Now that I've beaten the game, I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about it. The narrative jumps around like a kangaroo on meth, the characters are either uninteresting or aggravating, and the game design keeps contradicting itself. And if you thought I covered all my thoughts in this video, think again. I have a litany of other nitpicks. I just omitted them because this video is already long enough. But when it comes to how I feel, I don't feel happy, I don't feel mad, I just feel depressed. This game could be so much better than it currently is. The pieces are right there to make an amazing game. But instead of focusing on their strengths, they focus on these extraneous gimmicks like the paraglider. Horizon Forbidden West is a mess, and I wish it wasn't, because I know for a fact this series could be awesome. So hey, Guerrilla Games, if there's even a chance you're hearing this, listen up. Get your stuff in order. I know you haven't even started pre-production on Horizon 3 because you're focusing on making your Horizon Online game. But when the time comes, just focus on your strengths. Stop ripping off other games, get yourselves a better writing team, and direct your focus on what makes these games awesome. We're not going to see Horizon 3 until the 2030s, but when we do get it, maybe you will be able to make the Game of the Year contender I know you can. Anyways, this video has left me exhausted, so I'm gonna head out now. If you wouldn't mind, hitting the like button and subscribing would be greatly appreciated. Thanks for watching to the end, have a nice day, and I'll see you guys some other time. Bye.